Hello everyone, this is B1B Flyer here, and welcome to the fifth and final From Blister to Battle series video. This is going to take us along on how to prepare and then finally prime your miniatures and get them ready for that paint that you want to put on. So a lot of you are probably going to be thinking, hey, why do you need to do a video on this? Don't you just spray them and go for it? Well, yes and no. There's a lot of things that can go into that, cause problems, and I'm going to try to cover a lot of those. If you look online, you'll see plenty of folks have issues with priming and sealing and things like that. So that's why I'm doing this video, to show you what I do and some of the things that can potentially cause problems for you. As you can see here, I've mounted the Cyclops on a wine cork using a low temp glue from a glue gun. That's pretty much how I do it with mostly with my metal and oftentimes with my plastic miniatures. It's just a cheap, like less than $10 at a hobby store, low temp glue gun. Works really well. It's pretty much all I use it for. But you can use poster tack, you can use double-sided tape, you can use whatever you want. You use blocks of wood. It doesn't matter. Just give yourself something to hold on to. And the reason behind that is there's a whole underside to these miniatures, and if you can't get the angles on there, then you're going to be missing a lot of it when it comes time to put the actual paint on, and you're not giving yourself a good surface for that paint to adhere to. So for these plastic miniature, I've already degreased or cleaned using, I actually used a Windex, but anything that takes oils, grease, and things like that is something you want to use. So if you got it around the house, some dish soap, this is what I keep around. I use this sometimes for mixing in certain fluids and things like that, but you want a nylon brush is what I like to use, or an old toothbrush. Is also good to get antennas from, so dual purpose there. And then you want to completely rinse it off and let it dry. And what you're doing is removing any of the finger oils from when you were touching it and handling it, doing the mod work. And then also, plastic and metal miniatures have a release agent. So when they're cast, there's actually a coating on the mold, and you want none of that underneath your primer because it doesn't allow it to adhere properly. So from there, once it's completely dry and been rinsed off with water, let it completely dry. Don't want to spray anything wet. Then we're going to talk about primers. So there's a couple different ways you can prime. You can obviously use the spray paint method, and here's a picture of some of the most frequently used primers that I use. I've got a gray, a white, and then I've got two of the Army Painter ones, the flat white and their flat green, which looks pretty good. This is what it looks like just primed. So if you want to get that first color out of the way, this is a great way to do that. However, it is kind of expensive. It's about 15 bucks a can where I live. So I tend to use that Rust-Oleum Automotive Primer, Sandoval Automotive, and I've had really no issues with it. I really like it a lot. Some folks might like the Krylon or the Duplicolor. Lots of reviews and stuff online for all that, but you don't need to use really expensive or game-specific primer. You've also got brush-on primers. This is a Vallejo white, and then this is a Reaper black primer. What these are good for are touch-ups, or when you make corrections with putty to fill gaps that you might have missed. Things like this, where I've already primed this miniature black and then I changed my mind. I'm just going to put black brush-on primer on this, and then it'll all have the same undercoat. But again, great for like touching up if you have a little damage or a little bit flakes off, or you see that you missed a spot. That's great for that. So you can also use an airbrush. I don't have an airbrush set up for that, but that's another good way to do your priming. All right, so how to prime. I'm not going to take a video outside and show you how to shake a can and all that kind of stuff, but first we'll do some cartoons here. This is our can of paint. He says, shake me. Every can has an instruction to shake for at least 1 minute. You need to shake it, and then when you're done shaking it, you need to shake it some more. Don't let up on that. It needs to be thoroughly distributed inside the can. You've got two agents in there, typically a catalyst and then the actual material, and that's what you're doing, is you're engaging both of those so that you get a good adherence and a good cure on that paint. So how do we prime once we've shaken our can? All right, well, our little miniature here, you're going to start off to one side, start the spray, and then sweep across. If you start directly at the miniature, you're going to get spatters, you're going to get little blobs. If there's something stuck in the nozzle of the can, it's going to end up on your miniature. So start on one side and sweep through. Do that every time. Don't think that just because you sprayed once that you can just go directly after that. For those of you confused by how that works, here's a top-down picture. Start from one side and move across to spray your miniature. Move in light coats. You don't want to try to get it all done in one shot. I tend to hold my miniature and do the bottom side first, and then I work from the top down. I also wear a glove on my hands so I don't get a bunch of paint all over my hands. That's up to you. Something else I want to mention that can cause a problem, and I've actually been guilty of this too. If you're spraying one miniature, let's say you've got it on a plate or you've got it on some sort of piece of cardboard or whatever, and you've got multiple miniatures, behind it. There's a problem with that. You've got your optimal distance here, then you're going to have primer going where you want it, and then you're going to have partially dried primer potentially going on these further back miniatures. And what that does is it gives you a grainy and a textured surface that when you go to prime those, they'll show up right. You won't be able to prime over it. It will show through, and you'll end up with a non-smooth texture right from the beginning. There's not a lot you can do about that other than brushing off or removing the primer and then starting over again. So just be mindful if you're doing multiple miniatures, you really don't want to try to spray across where there's other miniatures behind it, because you're going to set yourself up for having a problem with that. And like I said, I've run across that a few times and I kick myself for it later. Then of course, once you're done priming, let the miniature dry completely. Follow the instructions on the can. Don't try to rush it. Primer needs to set up, and then the reason is that primer, if you put paint over it, you're sealing something in the primer potentially that needs to still evaporate, especially in the grooves or places where it might have gotten a little thicker. So just keep that in mind. You can't just prime it, wait for it to look mostly dry, and then throw paint on it. You could be setting yourself up for problems with that. So here's a picture of the primed and finished miniatures. That completes the From Blister to Battle series. Please subscribe, post your questions and comments below. Go to camospecs.com and visit our Facebook page. Future videos will involve painting and more instructionals. Please post your requests and let me know what you'd like to see. I appreciate y'all watching this. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.